Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. So this is the day, the final part of Cura advanced settings. We're gonna wrap everything up today. I believe this is like the fifth video on this particular topic. Today we're gonna cover speed, travel, cooling, support, and build plate adhesion. So after this we should be all done, and then we can continue on to other important parts of 3D printing. Alright, so with that said, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and get started. Speed, that's what's next. So let's get along. I already preloaded some models just in case we need to refer to it. So let's go through speed, guys. This should be pretty easy for most of you that have been printing for a while. Print speed, that is basically how fast the nozzle actually moves to print the model itself. I leave it anywhere from 50 to 60. It just depends. I mean, there's a lot of things that have play in here, so I'll go over why this sometimes doesn't make too much of a difference. Okay, so the print speed, which is basically the overall speed of the model, is set at 60 for me. Infill speed, what is that? That's basically, if you look here, most of you know what an infill is, but for those of you that don't, it's this part right here. I'm going the wrong way. This is your infill inside the model, and basically what you're telling it is, even though the overall speed of the model is at 60, I want the infill speed to be a different speed. You could have it 60, 70, 80. Most people have the infill speed a little bit faster because nobody ever looks inside the prints. So, I mean, you could have stringing, all kinds of stuff. It doesn't really matter. As long as your walls are smooth. That's what I normally care about. So, no, infill speed, you could make it a little bit higher, but don't go too high because otherwise you might just end up screwing yourself. Okay, so we just talked about infill speed. The next one's going to be wall speed, which is basically right here. If you notice, you got your green, which is your interior, inner wall, and the red, which is your outer wall. So the red is what, or burgundy is what we mainly focus on, but there also are inner walls as well. So what this is saying is your wall speed. How fast do you want it to print? I usually do the wall speed a little bit lower than the overall speed. So I mean, these are my exact settings, guys, so don't go by these, but the print speed is 60, the wall speed is 40. Top and bottom speed, that's basically the bottom of your model and the top of your model when the nozzle's printing. Why is this lower than my wall speed? Because when you don't have a good base or foundation, then your prints most likely, if you have a tall print, might fall over, or it might not stick to the bed that well. So if you print it slower at a higher temperature, if you can, than your normal temperature for the overall print, it will still stick better to your bed, giving you a stronger bond. This way it won't fall over or tip over. So take your time to do the initial layer. Now in this case, why the top as well? Because the top that I was printing, it was kind of like a pointy top of the model, so I wanted to go a little bit slower, take its time as well. You can pick top separate and bottom separate, that is a feature, but normally I leave them both the same. It doesn't really bother me much. Support speed basically is this right here. This is the support that holds your structure in place. That I really don't care too much about, so I left it at 60 as well. Travel speed. What is travel speed? Travel speed is basically, let me switch back to solid so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so travel speed is basically how fast you want your nozzle to move when it's printing this model, and then it goes over to print this model. How fast do you want it to travel in between? Keep in mind, if you don't set other settings correctly, you'll probably get stringing or webbing between these two. So that I've already gone over in another video, so if you want to check that out, go ahead and take a look at that. Initial layer speed, I set that low as well. Initial layer basically is the first layer, or the first couple of layers that you lay down, and again, the slower you go, the better it is, and the better it sticks to your bed. That's the easiest way I can explain it. Just take my word for it, and most people out there will tell you the same. Number of slower layers. What is this? So basically you have like layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4. So initial layer is 30, but my print speed is 60. So you're telling it here after the second layer, I want to speed up the speed, because it doesn't just jump from 30 to 60 right off the bat. So like the first layer maybe 30, second layer maybe 30, the third layer will be like 40 or 50, and then the fourth layer 60, 70, or whatever you set it at. Eventually it gradually increases, but here what you're telling it is I want the first two layers to be slow, and then after that it'll pick up speed and go from there. Okay. Equalize filament flow right here. Basically what that is, this feature prints thinner walls at a higher speed than normal. This keeps the nozzle lower on the printed part, so it prints it keeps a little bit lower, so when your filament's actually being laid down, it does a pretty good job on that one. That's the best way I can explain. This is something new that 2.6 has. Enable acceleration control. I leave that unchecked. Oh, by the way, I usually leave equalize filament flow unchecked. Enable acceleration control, I leave that unchecked. And then you have enable jerk control, and I leave that unchecked too. And what is enable jerk control? That's basically how do I put this? If checked, it reduces the speed of the nozzle, okay, because that's what's set by the firmware itself. It's slower, but you get better print quality on your prints. I leave them unchecked because by doing that it makes it faster, and with all my other settings that I have, I don't really need to have this part enabled. I don't need my prints to be a little bit slower, because as you know, 3D printing takes up a whole lot of time. So basically I leave that unchecked, and with my other settings that I have as far as support, quality, things like that, it doesn't affect it too much, so I just leave it unchecked. The reason it's here is because I want to make sure that it is not checked. So by unchecking it, you get maximum acceleration and jerk. So that's what I don't want, so that's why I have it unchecked. Okay, moving along to the next part, we will be talking about travel. And this is going to be pretty straightforward as well, guys. This is not something that's kind of like a make or break deal if you get it off just by a little bit. First one is enable combing. I usually leave this part disabled. I don't know why it's enabled here, but I just leave it off like so. Okay, so I leave this part disabled. When you check it, it will not retract on most points, which will leave spots and blemishes where you will have or you might have oozing. Okay, so as a 3D printer, we want retraction and less oozing. So for that reason alone, I leave it disabled. Okay, and then the next one I think I have to turn this on to get to the next one. Avoid printed parts when traveling. Uh, this is exactly what the title says. It's when the nozzle moves from one point to the other, one point to another when it prints. But while it moves from one point to another, it avoids the already printed parts. So it may like go like a different path to avoid it. So instead of going, let's say if it's going from here, and let's say there was another one in the middle, instead of going straight, it might actually like just go around. It's just so it avoids hitting the part in the middle. Um, so, I mean, you can leave that checked off. Again, this one is actually your call, but excuse me, it's basically to make sure that it doesn't hit your already printed parts on your model, so it doesn't knock it over or anything like that. So some people use it, some don't. It's actually up to you if you want to use it or not. Uh, and that's basically it on that one. Travel, avoid distance. Basically, what this is here you set the distance you want the nozzle to move when it's avoiding hitting parts that are already printed. Keep in mind, the higher you go on this number, the longer the travel time will be, and it's going to result in a longer overall print time. So this you can set however you want. I usually leave it. Well, it depends on the print. This changes with me as far as what I'm printing. If there's something I want where I just don't want to take the chance, then yeah, I go a higher number. But if not, then I really don't care. Layer start X and Y. I normally disable this because what this is where you want to position the start of the print for your X and Y layer. I usually leave them at 0. I think the other features of Cura, when you set it, it actually does a pretty good job. So I don't see why you would want to use this at all. So that's just my opinion again. I'm just going off of that. Z-hop when retracted. What this means is when you have a retraction, it's where it moves up and goes around the already printed area, so it doesn't knock it down or ooze on it, or giving it some kind of deformity. So basically, this one, it just avoids the print by moving around, and that's basically it. So when the filament actually retracts into the nozzle, that's when you're telling it to, hey, move around, don't go over a print that's already printed, because you might ooze on it, or you might knock it down, or you might scratch it, or you might do something to it that might cause an imperfection, or something along those lines. Okay, so this one, again, it's your call if you want to set it up or not, but for this particular print, I guess I had it set. I don't know why, but Z hop height. What this basically is here you can go as high as you want, your Z hop to be. So basically, when it prints, let's say here on if the nozzle's here and it's printing and it's going here, it goes up through and then down, and it starts printing this one. So basically, that's what that is, and you just tell it here how high you want it to go. Basically, that's about it. Okay, now travel is done. Moving on to cooling. Okay, coolings, guys. There's a lot of features in cooling, but I only use 2. One, I enable print cooling. Basically, what that's telling it is I want the fan to be on, and the initial fan I want it off, because, like I said earlier, the first couple layers is very important to your print, especially if you're printing something really high, because if you don't get a good adhesion, then there's a very good chance that your print might tip over and fall. So what this does, it turns the fan off. So you got the bed, which is heated, for those of you that have heated beds, and then you got the nozzle, which is heated. So when the filament comes out of that nozzle, it sticks better and it doesn't rapidly cool it, so it takes its time, giving it a stronger bond throughout the rest of your prints. So that's why I leave this at 0 all the time, and I enable print cooling all the time. Okay, so that's basically all I'm going to go over in cooling, because that's all I use. Okay, moving on to support, everybody's favorite. On here, I actually put my exact supports that I have been using, and this is effective as of 8/9/2017, which is a Thursday? Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. Okay, so generate support. Of course, you want to generate support. For those of you that don't know what it is, real quickly, if you notice right here, these little teal, I believe it's teal, not too good with colors, you can ask my wife, she tells me all the time, but basically right here, this is your support. If you don't enable that, then this arch right here, when the printer tries to print it, you might have some issues with it, and it might not come out perfect, might sag or whatever. You're just not going to print the arch that you're looking at here. So that's why the support's here, because I enabled the support. Next is support placement. Where do you want the support? Do you want it everywhere, or do you want it just the part that's touching the bed? So basically, you're saying, do you want support just here, which is touching the bed, or do you want support everywhere? Depending on what your print is, sometimes you might not need support everywhere. You might just need it on the part that's touching the bed, or sometimes you might not need it at all. So you can just uncheck this, and all of this will go away. There it is, all gone. So it's actually up to you how you want to do it, but as soon as you click that, it gives you way more options on what you want to do. So generate support, most of the time, yes. Support placement everywhere. This was on my last print that I did, so that's why I picked that. Support overhang angle. Basically what this is at what angle do you want the support to actually kick in. So what you're telling the software to do, so if you notice right here, there's no support here. Why is that? Because up to this point it gets to about 45 degrees. From here it goes more than 45, and that's why the support kicks in at this time. So at what overhang, or at what how do I explain this? Basically, how far can a print have an overhang without you putting a support on? So that's what that is. So here it's up to 45 from here to here, so it doesn't need a support. So for example, if I change this to, let's say, 55, it should reduce the size of the support from when you saw it earlier. Now, while this is preparing the layer view, just to let you know, if you go more than 90, it won't print anything, because 90 is a straight right angle, so if you put 90, it won't put any supports on it more than 90, and if you pick 0, it won't put any supports on it. So even though you might have generate support, and you actually put 0 here, and I'm sorry, I said that backwards. If you put 0, you're going to get support everywhere. That's why it's a good idea to figure out exactly how far your printer can go before you need support. So some people have the Fang mods on their printers, and I believe that goes up to 60. I've seen up to 60, 65 on some. So you might want to just double check what your printer is capable of and print like a test overhang test thing that you can download from Thingiverse. So notice when I put 55, this got smaller. Before it was starting over here, and now it's starting over here because this is where 55 is at. So this is basically, again, just at what angle do you want the supports to start printing. Okay, support pattern, basically I went over patterns in the previous video, so I'm not going to go over what these are. But basically, what pattern do you want the supports to print? I usually go zigzag. So what that does is let's take a look at it. If you notice, it just goes like that, just exactly what it is, a zigzag. So up, down, and it's connected all the way through, which brings us to our next topic: connect supports for zigzags. And I have that checked off, and that's why they're all connected. So that's just something I prefer, because I think zigzags are just easier to take off, man. I mean, I've tried line and grids, and they're just like a pain in the ass. Zigzags works best for me so far that I have found. So I checked that part. Support density, basically how strong do you want your supports to be? You don't want them to be at 100, because if you put them at 100, it's basically solid and stuck to your models. So I found out for me 37 is pretty good. I've seen some people with 40, I've seen some people with 50, but nothing over like 60 or 70, because it's just harder to clean off. I mean, I'm going to put out a video, my next video, and I'm going to show you that I'm getting better at my support features. And I'll actually show you a print that where I remove the supports from it. It doesn't take that long. But anyways, that's a whole different video. Moving along, support line distance, basically the distance between this and this. So you notice these will all have the same amount of distance on it. Same thing applies here, but it's just regarding the Z distance, and Z is of course up and down, if you guys don't know. And this one is the support distance you want to set for the X and Y. Now normally, if you change this, let's say 34, the support line distance will change for you automatically. Okay, the Z and the X and Y distance is something you set yourself. So basically, what is the distance that you want on the support on the X and Y when it's printing in that direction, and what is the minimum that you want? So here we want it to be 0.7, but the minimum we want is a 0.2. Okay, now why do these numbers make a difference? Because when you're trying to remove them, especially here with the Z, I mean, we just did, or I just did a 0.1, but when I try to pull this sucker apart, 90% of my supports, I mean, I can just pull off with pliers or even with my bare hands. So that works out pretty well. Now if you make this like say a 0.4, then basically that's not gonna touch your model that much, and you might have a little bit of issues there. So I think 1 is a good set. I know I started with 3, went to 2, and 1 worked out perfect. All these numbers here, guys, is, I mean, it was just some ruthless printing over failure after failure of trying to get support off. So this one actually worked out pretty well for me. And this is my setting. If you want to try it out, feel free to do so. Okay? And that's basically support. I know it's one of the most important things as far as the amount of frustration it gives you at the end of your print being finished, because this is what you have to sit here and actually remove. So but these are my settings. Use it if you like, test it out, do a small print, nothing crazy. Build plate adhesion. Basically what this is, guys, is, let me zoom out a little bit. Oh shit, that's too much. Okay, do you want a raft? A raft basically, well, let me go and start with the other one. Let's start with a skirt. And what this basically is when your nozzle, before it starts to print, it will print a thin single layer around where your print's going to go, because you want to get the nozzle flowing, you want to get the filament out, so this way when it gets to your print there is no miss or hit, right, or hit or miss basically, so you don't want gaps between your filament coming out, things like that. So skirt basically is, if you notice, just one single line going all the way across your print. Okay, if you go to brim is basically the same thing as a skirt, but it has multiple lines. So instead of just one, it can it'll have maybe like 6 or 7. For most part, if I'm printing something tall, or sorry, medium size, I usually go with brim just because I want to make sure. I'm sorry, not brim. I do a skirt for small to medium prints. The reason for that is because I want to make sure that my nozzle is flowing pretty well. So here I think it's like 4 or 5 layers. But on really big, tall prints, some people might disagree with me on this one, but I usually print a raft. The reason is, one, it sticks better to your bed. 2, your print actually prints on the raft instead of the bed, therefore giving you a stronger adhesion. And usually when I print a raft, I usually do it for big prints, and they do not fall over, because if you didn't put enough glue, hairspray, or PEI plate, whatever you use, if it's just not right, then it's just gonna fall over. So let's just say this whole piece right here, if you notice, even though only these 2 parts are touching, it printed a raft all the way around, so your supports get that little bit of strength as well. So I usually like to go with raft air gap. Well, these guys, I'm not going to go too much into it, but just to let you know what this is basically, if you notice right here, it says it's the gap between the final layer of the raft and the print itself. So it leaves a little bit of gap. Now why does it do that? When I've been talking about adhesion and how it sticks better, so wouldn't you want it to stick to the raft? No, because when you try to peel it off, it gives you one hell of a time. So what this does is gives you a little bit of a gap between your print and your raft itself. The initial layer right here, what this is basically in these in the up and up direction, which is the Z direction. The first 2 layers, it tends to like smush them together, or overlap them. Actually, I shouldn't say smush, it overlaps them because of the gap that you have between the raft and the actual layer down here. So just giving it a little bit stronger connection, because you are losing a little bit down here when the raft and the model itself, because you are leaving a gap of 0.3. So this is compensates for that. Raft top layers, I leave that at 2, and that's what works for me so far. I don't use dual extractions because I only have a single, so there's no point in that. Special mode, just for right now, basically print all at once. That's it. So basically you're saying that I want to print everything, this one and this one, at one time. Everything that's on the bed will print at one time. And there is a special mode for vases, which I will go over later, but you can access that. For those of you that don't know, you can just click there, and then there's a whole bunch of settings here that you can pick. So for the vase, we probably want to pick these 2 and go from there. And I think they actually have like a vase mode in the new model, which I'm not sure about because I haven't checked it out. But that's basically it, guys. This should cover the advanced feature of all of Cura. I did go a little bit faster on these because I covered a whole lot today The only reason was I had one or two people tell me that I could probably go a little bit faster instead of getting too much in depth. So because of that reason, I hope I didn't rush anybody, or if you guys felt rushed, I apologize for that. But that covers everything on the advanced or custom feature of Cura. The only thing that I would tell you you can actually go by is my support settings. I did put these are my actual settings, which is a base to start with. It's a guide. You modify it as you go on. Each print is different, like I said, so I don't use this on every print. Every print I tweak it a little bit depending on how I feel or what I think needs to be done. With that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the advanced features of the Cura from the first video to this one. I do apologize, it was a lengthy video, but I hope it helped some people out. And if you have any questions or concerns, you know what to do. Drop it down below. If you like it, like it. If you don't, then I apologize, but give me a thumbs down in that case then. If you want to see more content on stuff like this, please subscribe, and then every time I put out a video, it'll notify you, or I think you gotta turn notification on or something like that. Alright, so with that said, thank you guys all for watching and your support, and like always guys, good luck and happy printing.